This way. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this exciting evening with Dr. Trina Nguyen, hosted by the Psychedelic Society Sweden. My name is Filippa, and here's
My name is Linda.
yeah. And we are very, very excited to have you with us tonight, Trina. This webinar is going to be about the 5-MeO DMT, known to be one of the most powerful psychedelic substances and renowned for its deeply transformative experiences. And you, Trina, you are the founder of Toad.School, which you're going to talk, I guess, more about tonight, but also known as the Dharmacist and a psychedelic safety consultant and Dharmacist with over 20 years of experience in the pharmacy and medicinal research. So the evening tonight is going to be a 1 hour presentation with Trina, and then we'll have 30 minutes for Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat. The chat should be active, but if not, we'll check that in a minute. So write your questions in the chat throughout the webinar, and then we'll go through them at the end. Me and Linda will read them loud. All right. So thank you for joining us. I will leave the word over to you.
Thank you. And let me set up let me share my slideshow. 1 second. And let me try to remember how to do this. I have already forgotten how to do this. Let's see here. It is share screen. There we go. Start. Okay, we're just going to test audio and video. Everything's working out.
Everything works. We see your screen and we can hear you.
Okay. And should I hide your screen as well? There we go.
Yes, do that. Perfect.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Trina Nguyen. I'm very honored to connect with you all and to be of some sharing of wisdom and knowledge of my favorite molecule, which is 5-methoxy-DMT. And I'm going to do some necessary, but some quick legal jargon. So just to share that this presentation is for educational and informal informational purposes only. Content shared reflects my own personal experience, and the opinions are not intended to encourage, promote, or facilitate the use, possession, or distribution of any substances, including 5-MeO-DMT. Please note that 5-MeO-DMT is a regulated substance in many jurisdictions, including Sweden, where its use, possession, and distribution are illegal, whereas in Canada, it is unscheduled. I have let go of my professional license as a pharmacist, so the information provided should not be considered medical advice, legal counsel, or therapeutic guidance. So now that we have that cleared, I'll start a little bit about myself, which is, I'm not sure if any of you in Europe have grown up with a manual on how to be human, but I did not. So I grew up with following what my parents thought were how to be successful. And so that started off with go to school. So I did that and received my Bachelor of Pharmacy. And after that, then my doctorate, and got married and thought I was going to do what society said was how to live a happy life, which is get married, buy a house, have a dog, have 2 cars. But if I'm not sure if towards midlife crisis, if you've experienced this hunger or emptiness inside, which I definitely experienced, which was how I ended up leaving my husband and just going through a stage of my own personal depression. And it was when I reconnected with psychedelics. And I did many of them in my teenage years recreationally, and it was amazing and fun. But when I rediscovered it in a therapeutic model, that was what catapulted me into, well, the life that I have now. And so that healed my spirit. I remember I used to be a person who had such body dysmorphia that I didn't even want to look in the mirror. And I remember after an ayahuasca experience, the very next day, started dancing and took my clothes off and thought, oh, this is amazing. So it was incredibly healing. And then after that, I decided to go to Burning Man, which is an amazing experience and hosted in the US. And that truly healed my community, my humanity, because I was angry at humans and how we couldn't care for the planet. And at Burning Man was when I met my former partner and co-founder of Toad.School. And he shared with me, if you thought Burning Man was amazing, you should go to Vipassana. So I went to Vipassana and reconnected with meditation. And that has been part of my absolute healing journey. And then I became very interested with holistic healing. There is something more than just taking a pill to try to help you heal and get better.
Dr.
So
Trina, can I
yes,
just interrupt you? Do you want to put on
yes,
your
go ahead.
camera?
Oh, is it not working?
It's
Let
not
me
working.
see. It says my host has disabled it.
We saw you before.
Yeah. Let me see if I can change the view and it changes anything.
You can put it on now. Okay, yay, perfect.
Oh, okay, let's try it again. All right, do you see me now? Yes. So everything's working because I think you're muted now. Okay. So,
It's working great.
okay. Good. Thank you.
And you can remove us again if you want to.
Okay. Let
Thank
me know
you.
if there's any more
Perfect.
technical difficulties. There's an interesting phenomenon with myself and nothing electronic seems to work around me. So let me know if there's any AV issues.
Yeah, now your camera is off again.
It's off again. See, maybe when I have you on screen, that's when it works.
Then keep us on the screen. You'll all have
Okay.
to fancy us the whole webinar. But now your camera is off.
Okay, let me try again. This is very interesting how the iPad doesn't seem to. Let me stop sharing again.
Yeah.
Try it. It's still saying my. Yeah, it's still saying that I'm not able to start my video because my host has disabled it.
Just hold on. Oh, it says it's okay, let me do like this. Does it work now for you to put it on?
No, it says the host still disabled it. That's
okay. Well, we make you host.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Okay, well, this part doesn't really require that screen. So continue on with my story. So I started to go into a search of what does healing feel like? This was not part of the manual of how to be human. And I began volunteering for the Canadian MAPS, so the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. And I had this little part of me that still knew there was something more to the psychedelic experience. I've had many amazing and healing experiences with multiple different psychedelics, but I had not understood what a full surrender was. And I'm not sure if any of you have contemplated what does letting go feel like? What does an ego dissolution feel like? So I went on the hunt for that. And my friend, who was the former director of MAPS Canada, said, if you're looking for that, Trina, you need to experience 5-MeO DMT. And he connected me with his favorite facilitators. And all I can say was, I found it. And that changed, let's say it was existence shattering. And now I'm going to let me go back to sharing my screen now. Okay. Okay. Well, that led me into my own search, and it landed me in India, where I wanted to learn more about ancient practices of yoga. And so I did my yoga teacher training and did some applied kinesiology as well. And I really aligned with the practice of yoga, the royal path, the eightfold path of Ashtanga yoga. But before we move to that, I just found this really salient quote that I'd love to share with you all. And that it's in one of my favorite books called The Seventh Sense. And the very first page was dedicated to this monk who shared this incredibly powerful quote. And he states that in the 19th century, the biggest threat to humanity was pneumonia. In the 20th century, it was cancer. The illness that will mark our era, and particularly the start of the 21st century, is insanity, or we can say spiritual disease. The next century is going to be especially turbulent. It's already begun. And when I say insanity and spiritual disease, I don't only mean inside the minds of individuals. Politics, military, economics, education, culture, and medicine, all these will be affected. And I do believe that we are really feeling the rumblings, and it feels so true, especially, well, in these last few months. And it got me to think about the immortality key and the author Brian Marescu, who he he started to research what has been the spark of all religions. And his theory is that sacraments, psychedelics have been part of our civilization and religion since beginning of time. And while it was the 17th century where we started to understand that colonizers suppressed the use of psychedelics, and here in modern times, since the 19th century, or sorry, the 20th century, we've had a almost worldwide ban of psychedelics. So what happens when the mortar of a home begins to crumble? So I'm moving back to where I really find that there's an alignment with this is my guidebook on how to be a good human. And so in Brian Marescu's book, he says that he speaks about soma, and he states that, well, soma was a ritual drink described in ancient texts like the Rig Veda, and it was believed to facilitate communion with the divine. And there's a quote from the Rig Veda, and it states, "We have drunk soma and met the gods. We have attained the light and become immortals." So similar to the Gnostics, which was from early Christianity, they emphasized experiential knowing of the divine, experiential insight. So how do we connect with our spirit, with our own divinity, without experiencing it first? So my belief is that those who've known the way, who have experienced samadhi, they then provided a path on how to attain that. And so I'm going to illustrate this eightfold path from Ashtanga Yoga. And there's yama, niyama, asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And I'll go through each one of those limbs and how I find that 5-MeO DMT helps facilitate a deepening into each one of these limbs. So the first two limbs are yama and niyama, which are ethical principles. Yama, the first one, is nonviolence, being truthful, non-stealing. It's very similar to the 10 Commandments. And then the second limb is niyama, which is personal discipline, similarly to cleanliness and contentment and self-reflection. I believe that the focus and growth in these two limbs will foster our most authentic selves through self-awareness. And I liken this to the more modern work of Carl Jung, or IFS, which is internal family systems, where in Carl Jung's, the idea of the shadow is the unconscious part of the psyche that contains traits, desires, and impulses that a person rejects and represses because it's in conflict with, well, what their ego says they should be, how society and the impressions of the world say this is who you should be. So, and more recently, if you're familiar with internal family systems, it's also known as parts work, where there's managers, firefighters, and exiles. And IFS therapy focuses on accessing the core self, which is the capital SELF, and to allow the individual to compassionately engage with the parts and heal their burdens and restore internal harmony. So when I've served 5-methoxy DMT in ceremony, I've witnessed the self emerge without even coaxing or talking to the exiles, managers, or firefighters. It's quite astounding how the self just emerges. And I've had some testimonials where they share, I quote, "I thought it was all woo," and I was speaking about IFS, "until I tried this with 5-MeO DMT. And then it all made sense. And now my work with IFS is extremely powerful." So my personal belief is if we can integrate the shadow or parts, practicing niyama is not effortful. It would be effortless if we access our personal power and authenticity. And being a kind human would be natural. And then we all know yoga in the modern world. We think yoga are all the stretches and movements, but that's just number 3 of the Eightfold Path. And so these are called asanas or postures, and they're meant to prepare the body for meditation and also to promote health. And so asanas invite a new relationship with the body. You become more aware somatically, and studies have shown that yoga alters gene expression linked to inflammation. So, common observation after many people receive a low dose of 5-methoxy DMT is they just begin to become more aware of their bodies. So many people start to stretch and they're like, oh, I didn't know I had tension in these areas. So it's really promoting an awareness of the body. And also, if you've done yoga before, you might notice, okay, I'm uncontrollably trembling and I can't stop it, especially in the chair pose. Um, there are many healing modalities now in somatic work, including there's TRE, which is tremor releasing exercises, and they induce a tremor to heal the body and release trauma. And interestingly, when I serve 5-methoxy DMT, there's an involuntary tremor that often shows up in the belly area. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the belly is the region where we hold worry, anxiety, and overthinking. And I wanted to add in that there is so much research now with 5-methoxy DMT, and they found that 5-methoxy DMT promotes all of these 3: neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, and is anti-inflammatory. So just as a quick background, neurogenesis is the creation of new neurons. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and adapt in response to experience. And inflammation is the marker of many chronic diseases. And there's even a link of inflammation and depression. So with 5-methoxy DMT, we found that in mice, it has increased the spine density by 10 to 15%. And for neuroplasticity or neurogenesis, we've seen increasing cell proliferation and maturation of an area of the brain called the dentate gyrus. And its anti-inflammatory properties are that it significantly reduces the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 1 beta, 6, TNF alpha, and the chemokine interleukin 8. So there's increasing evidence that there are some very positive cellular benefits with 5-methoxy DMT. And now pranayama, which has now been modernized into breath work. So I'm sure you're all familiar, I've heard of that. And that's a technique to regulate breathing and to control the flow of life energy, or prana. So the breath is very important. It is the bridge between the conscious and the subconscious. It's autonomic, which you don't even have to think about breathing, but it could be conscious too. So that is the very unique bridge that breath offers. And in my very first 5-methoxy DMT experience, my first words as I was seeking surrender was, surrender is beautiful. But my second words I uttered after my experience was, breath is so precious. And another journeyer, in her experience, she shared that I didn't even know what breath was. I felt like I truly connected with my breath for the first time. So I've offered and received 5-methoxy DMT in breath work, and it provides such an incredible deepening of this experience. So the fifth limb is pratyahara, or the withdrawal of senses. And so we're beginning in modern times to start to work with this. So isolation tanks, or those tanks where we're held in a beautiful womb of warm water, that's is a withdrawal of many senses. So 5-methoxy-DMT isn't like any other psychedelic. So as if you think about psychedelics like psilocybin or ayahuasca, which contains DMT, it's very visual. It's very, Terence McKenna would call it like, oh, machine elves. 5-methoxy-DMT is a completely different experience. It is barely visual and is incredibly somatic, but it's beyond senses. You might start to see maybe some black and white fractals for most people, but it is truly going within. And it reminds me of the Heart Sutra, which describes there is no eye to see, there is no ear to hear, there is no skin to touch, there is no tongue to taste. It's truly going into the realm of the observer or pure consciousness. And to experience this, that is gnosis. And then there's the sixth limb, which is dharana, which is concentration. So there's preliminary research, and I found in Christopher Timmerman's presentation, which is called Preliminary Findings of the Utility of Employing 5-MeO DMT to Study MPEs, which is Minimal Phenomenal Experiences, which is similar to, he wanted to find out, does 5-MeO DMT mimic a meditative state? So he did find that the administration of 5-MeO DMT does globally reduce alpha power in the brain. So that's a brain state, a wave state. And it also decreases default mode network activity, which is what is the other end of concentration. If your default mode network is on, you are daydreaming, you have self-referential thought, you're thinking about the past and the future, whereas dharana, which is going straight into focusing on one thing and being present. So 5-methoxy-DMT can aid and help with being able to be present and focused. And there is a testimonial I've received where one person was self-administering low-dose intranasal 5-methoxy-DMT, and he's a psychotherapist, and he says, I've tried everything for my ADHD. Stimulants don't work for me, amphetamines don't work for me. But with the 5, I've been able to finally quiet my mind down. And now limb number 7 is dhyana, so meditation. This is in modern times what we call flow state. It's a state where the mind just becomes effortlessly absorbed, and it leads to a continuous state of flow and awareness. The mind is calm, steady, and free from distractions. So also in that presentation I mentioned from Christopher Timmerman, he found that when one receives 5-methoxy-DMT, it creates and resembles the same state in which advanced meditative practices are in. So those are selfless states. And now the final limb, which for many monks may take thousands of hours to possibly achieve, or even lifetimes. I went to Burma and asked many of the elder monks, have you achieved enlightenment? And many of them said, no, not yet, not in this lifetime. But what if we had a privilege to have this experience? And when I had my very first experience with 5-methoxy-DMT, it was undeniably the state of samadhi. It was what the autobiography of a yogi describes, it's what the Yoga Sutras describe. All of this, when I read their words, it sends shivers down my spine because I've had that experience. So in this time of spiritual crisis, I do believe that new technologies come forth. And so 5-methoxy-DMT is known as the goddess molecule. And it's the most potent psychedelic on the planet that we know of. And it can take you to this state of egolessness and samadhi. So now let's go into a little bit more of what this amazing molecule is all about. So this is our beloved toad, also known as Encelius alvarius, but before was classified as Bufo alvarius. So they've reclassified her. And she's this toad that lives around the Colorado River Basin. And she lives underground for 9 to 10 months out of the year and comes out when it rains. And underground, she sits and collects this venom that we know of as 5-methoxy-DMT. There's this monk meditator called Mantak Chia, and he leads many darkroom meditations, or known as Kaya Kalpa. And he says that the body will, in the first few days of a darkroom meditation, you are producing melatonin. You're just flooding your system with melatonin. And then it moves into pinolin. And after pinolin, then the body starts to make its own 5-methoxy-DMT and NN-DMT. And I thought, I have to experience this. So I embarked on my own. I went to Indonesia and did 21 days in complete isolation and darkness. And I can personally attest to that truth, which is after day 9, I was visualizing, I was in a cave. I was seeing different colors, palm trees, different plants, lights showing up. And I had that very distinct experience of the invitation of surrendering. So I can personally attest to, yes, we do create 5-methoxy-DMT naturally in our bodies, and that's reproduced in the lab. We have found it in our blood, in our urine, and our cerebral spinal fluid. So there's a lot of information on this slide. So there's how we find 5-methoxy-DMT. Well, we actually synthesized it in the 1930s in Japan, and that sat on a shelf for many, many, many decades. And then it wasn't until 1983 where the gentleman's name was Kevin Nelson, but in his pamphlet, he referred to himself as Albert Most. And he was the first person that we know of that described how to smoke the toad. Now, now that we have science and technology, we can thank the toad, thank her for her sharing this medicine with us, and we can synthesize it in a lab. And I think that there are different groups out there that will say, oh, well, Bufo is the way to go. But I've served the synthetic version, I call it vegan Bufo, to even facilitators who have worked with Bufo, and they wake up from their journey and they say, Trina, I'm so glad we don't have to harm the toads anymore. So I trust and believe that we go to the same place. It is the molecule 5-methoxy-DMT that can take you to samadhi consciousness. So I don't believe we have to harm the toads anymore, but you can take this message as you wish. But I do believe in the practice of ahimsa, which is nonviolence. And if you ask a toad, can I capture you, throw you into a sack with dozens of other toads where you may contract fungal infections and your children, and then extract your glands, would you agree with that? I don't think she'd say yes. And also, those are her defense mechanisms in her glands, which allows her to protect herself from predators who are encroaching onto their environment. So we're also leaving them defenseless for up to 3 weeks. So I do encourage you, if you do work with this molecule, to seek out synthetic, if you will. And now the molecule itself is eerily similar to serotonin. It's an agonist, which means it attaches to the receptor. And so it attaches to many different serotonin receptors. And the affinity, the highest affinity that it has is on serotonin 1A. So serotonin has multiple different receptor and subtypes. There's actually 14 of them, but there's 1A, 2A, 2B. And what we know from our current science is that the receptor serotonin 2A is the psychedelic key. But interestingly, 5-methoxy-DMT has affinity to serotonin 2A, but not very strongly. The most strongly it attaches to is serotonin 1A and 7. So we're still learning the science of the psychedelic key and how our brains work. Whether we will find that out, that might be decades, but it's a beautiful mystery for us. And once again, for vegan bufo, there are benefits to it, which is there's a lot less volume to smoke. You need 6 to 7 times more to be able to, you have to smoke bufo, the powder, 6 to 7 times more in volume than the pure synthetic version. And there's a lot of different routes of administration you can offer as well. And there's no cardiotoxins as you know, it's a protective mechanism of the toad. So it's clear. The synthetic just is pure 5-methoxy-DMT. And there's a lot of ongoing research. I'm going to move this up here. I mentioned before, intranasal, it's an incredibly beautiful way to receive 5-methoxy-DMT. There's some labs trying to make some analogs of it in oral form, and there's even studies with the intramuscular injection now. So it's a very exciting phase for psychedelic research. And I wanted to point out two very important dosing ranges. This is from the work of Ralph Metzner. Oh, let me know if you can still see me. Okay. And he mentions that the effective dose, there's 2 doses, and Ralph Metzner wrote the book Toad and the Jaguar. And he was a field researcher and witnessed thousands of 5-MeO experiences. So he came up with these 2 dosing ranges. When you're at the 5-milligram dosing range, for 50% of people, that is the effective dose where the dose becomes psychoactive. And then 15 milligrams is where the dose may start becoming dissociative. And he describes a dissociative dose as an experience which cannot be meaningfully remembered or described. The person may simply notice time has elapsed and their memory is blank, but it may not be accompanied by feelings of anxiety and may not be reported as bad. Some may even report the experience can be calm or blissful. But what's most important is that the experience cannot be assimilated. So it's very difficult to integrate what we call a whiteout. That's what the term is when it's interesting, we call it a whiteout, but I would also even just say it's like a blackout. It's like you're in a coma and you wake up from the experience and you can't remember anything. So dosing is incredibly important. I'm glad that science is on our side to start demonstrating how do we dose 5-methoxy-DMT where it's safe And it could also provide us with the peak experience or the ego dissolution that we're looking for. So this is a screen where there's the placebo, where they offer 2 milligrams, and they either gave, and each arm was 4 participants. So they gave 4 people. Well, in this one, it looked like it was 6 people the 6 milligram, 4 people the 12 milligram, and 4 people the 18 milligram. And then this IDE stands for individualized dose escalation, where they provided 6 milligram. If they had a peak experience, they stopped there. And if they didn't, they moved on to the 12 milligram. And if they had a peak experience, they'd stop there. And then they'd move on to the 18 milligram. And that would be the maximum dose there. And if you see where they rated a peak experience was at 75, the scale. And surprisingly, you would think in our modern world, oh, if you go big, you'll get the experience. But the 18 milligram dose, actually, maybe one person described a peak experience. 12 milligram actually had more people describe a peak experience, but it was the dosing escalation where it was individualized, provided a peak experience for each participant. And if you see on the right hand, challenging experience, it was pretty much the same level of challenge if you received up to 3 or 1. And the same goes for the scale for mystical experience. The individualized dosing was the one that had the highest mystical experience rating. And same for ego dissolution. And this is very exciting because we're beginning to research 5-methoxy-DMT in clinical applications. This one is treatment-resistant depression. And in this trial, I just wanted to point out that it was the individualized dose scheduling, which is where we had remission even at day 7. So that equated to about an 87% response rate of depression, treatment-resistant depression even after day 7. And there's another trial, it has not yet been published, but this is with intranasal use of 5-methoxy-DMT. And they showed that not only did it have rapid antidepressant effects, which was intranasal, which is much more easily tolerated. So 55% had a response of rapid antidepressant effect after day 1, and 55% were still in remission by day 29, and 45 after day 85. So it is remarkable that we have not only rapid antidepressant effects, but quite enduring as well. Whereas with our modern therapy with SSRIs or SNRIs, we may start seeing antidepressant effects start at possibly around week 4, and we really do the assessment around week 9. And when there are people who are really suffering from major depression, treatment-resistant depression, each day is a struggle. So I'm so pleased that we have so much research in the pipeline right now. 5-MeO DMT, if you look at all the phase 1 and 2 trials right now, there are multiple indications that it's being studied for. So I mentioned treatment-resistant depression. There's another indication for bipolar 2 disorder, postpartum depression, alcohol use disorder, depression and anxiety and Alzheimer's disease, substance use disorders, and fibromyalgia and chronic pain as well. So I'm going to move back to that 5-methoxy-DMT has the ability to work with our modern ailments, but there's a pathway to connecting back with our spirit, to our authenticity, to our own personal power. And in Canada, as is unscheduled, we've been able to evolve its practice. So with low dose, we're able to work with shadow work and with IFS therapy, and then even with somatic work, breath work, and conscious relating as well. So there's an incredible spectrum of use with 5-methoxy-DMT. And when one does become ready, they can move into spiritual growth, which is what that was the ultimate healing for me. And so I'm very, very lucky in Canada that it's unscheduled. So we are growing the number of people who are working with this molecule with awareness in a harm reduction model where we focus on consent, safety, and reverence of the molecule. So I offer a program called Toad.School. And so once again, we focus on safety, harm reduction, and learn to work with this molecule in however it best dovetails the facilitator, whether they are a somatic worker, whether they are a death doula, whether they're a therapist. They find their own unique gift and they dovetail the medicine together to have a safe and unique and beautiful offering. So I'm actually doing a Toad.School this weekend. I'll be receiving this is our last day, day 3 of working with and learning about the molecule. And I also am working through a decentralized model and trying my first online cohort next week. So that is Toad.School, and Toad.School in a Box is I'm working on decentralizing this project so that we can all share this molecule together. So if you would like to learn more, you can connect with me. I also, with my background and knowledge in pharmacy, I have the honor of connecting with people who are unsure whether it's safe to navigate psychedelics with their herbal supplements, all of the things they're taking in their medical concerns. And we just talk through it. And I try to find the science to help identify if there are any concerns. And I have the honor of supporting them in their own healing journey. So I'm going to now stop the share.
And we're gonna try to come back. We'll see if we can make you your. Let's see if we can get you on the video. Can you activate your?
I'm going to try again. Yeah, there we go. I was wondering if my screen was available or not.
We definitely had some technical issues for this webinar, but I'm so thankful for your presentation, Trina. And sorry for you at home that you had to experience this, but I hope you enjoyed everything that Trina shared and that it was insightful and interesting. As we mentioned in the beginning, we'll open up for questions for Q&A. So if you have any questions now, like write them in the chat so we can ask them so you can get your answers if you have any questions.
We had one comment that I think would be nice to have your reflection on, Ina. What is your take on the similarities between 5-MeO DMT and MDMA?
They both have very unique and powerful and healing modalities. So MDMA, if you have had that experience, you do have increased tactility, like everything feels amazing. If there's something soft, you want to go and touch it. So there is an increase in somatics there. But MDMA is also a portal into love and self-compassion. So I think it is, I am very pleased that we're studying it with PTSD and depression and anxiety, but it is a very different experience, as MDMA is very colored with love and compassion. 5-methoxy-DMT is connecting and with the full authentic self. I don't feel altered. It feels as if it's a very clear experience, and it moves into the, we'll call it the subconscious or unconscious realms and deeper. So there is a, until you experience it, I'm trying to see if there's another way to describe it. But also 5-methoxy-DMT is a very short acting experience. It takes maybe about 30 minutes for the one dose of the high dose, whereas MDMA, as you know, may take 4 hours, maybe even up to 6 in some individuals. So there, you can, if you study it and put it in 2 arms, you will absolutely know the difference between the experiences.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And then we had a question. Do you use medicine from the toad or the synthetic one?
I use only vegan bufo because I also like to work with all the different forms of it. So I also love serving and receiving it insufflated. So that is the intranasal version, which is a much slower onset. It takes 3 to 5 minutes for the onset, and then its peak is in about 12 to 15 minutes, and then it just continues to ride that beautiful dose, which allows for a really simple integration. It takes 40 to even an hour long of duration. So it's a smoother experience, and it's easier to integrate. So that's why I use vegan bufo. And also, since I passionately believe in nonviolence, that's why I prefer to now thank the toad for her knowledge and her wisdom and her blueprints, and now work with the vegan bufo. Oh, I did have, I'll answer one more question, since I saw one about the different strengths, or I think that was the between batches. I think I saw a question about between the batches.
Let's see if we can find it.
Yes. You mentioned 2 types of DMT produced. No, maybe not this one. Sorry.
Well, I will speak to that. As so bufo, there was an original study many years ago from a scientist where he said that between batches, there was a 200% variance between 5-methoxy-DMT content. So Hamilton Morris then recreated that study with the new techniques of the scientific method, which is more rigorous and more standardized. And he has found, so it's not between male and female bufo toads, but just between different batches of the bufo secretions. He found there was a 50% variance between batches of 5-methoxy-DMT. So that is a huge difference when it comes to dosing the molecule, because 10 milligrams of synthetic is where I often offer to move into that peak experience of samadhi consciousness. And 15 milligrams, which is 50% more, could lead to a whiteout or disassociative state. So that's why I also, as a background of a pharmacist, I like to control for as many factors as possible to allow for the independent factors to then come and play. So I like to control for dose, setting, safety, and then all the other factors then are outside of my control. So that's why I very much am focused on correct and safe dosing.
Well, and speaking about that, talking about risks, do you have any thoughts on risk? We have a question about that in the chat.
You can lose at high doses, you can lose your bodily awareness. So there are some physical risks to receiving 5-methoxy-DMT, which is there are a low percentage of people that will just begin to purge on it. And if you lose your bodily function and purge, that could lead to asphyxiation, which means you can't breathe, or you can then inhale some of what you had vomited, and then can lead to pneumonia, and then can lead to sepsis, and then can lead to death. So I highly, highly recommend, if you're going to, of all the molecules, 5-methoxy-DMT is the one where you should absolutely have someone with you when you receive this medicine. And then there are also pharmaceutical interactions as well, which we didn't touch on in the presentation. So thank you for asking the question. There's the safety one is with a monoamine oxidase. That would be a contraindication with the molecule 5-methoxy-DMT. So monoamine oxidase is an inhibitor. Monoamine oxidase, if you add an inhibitor to it, it doesn't allow for 5-methoxy-DMT to break down in the pathway it likes to break down. The majority of it is broken down by this one enzyme called monoamine oxidase. But if you inhibit that, now you have only one other pathway to clear 5-methoxy-DMT, and that's through the liver, which is a specific enzyme called CYP2D6. And 10% of the Caucasian population actually are poor metabolizers or lack this enzyme. So now you are playing Russian roulette with having toxic levels and then leading to serotonin syndrome. So until one day we all have tested our DNA to find out, am I a poor metabolizer or not? It is at this point a big risk of possible death. So that's the absolute contraindication with 5-methoxy-DMT, is adding on a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And also why, in the experience where you are in a non-dual state, there is no such thing as time. So whether it's 2 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour, I think that I'd say it is just nice that it could be a quick visit into the space of non-duality. I can't imagine doing this for 2 hours, which is what ayahuasca is. Ayahuasca is what we know as is NMDMT, but also known as DMT, and then they add an MAOI inhibitor to allow for prolonged experience. And that then allows for about an hour and a half to 2 hour experience. So the 5-methoxy-DMT experience, I'm very happy that it's a short experience because it's so intense and profound. It's nice to dip your toes into that.
All right, good to mention that and to get that on the table. So we got a few other questions here. Would you like to clarify what vegan bufo is?
So that's the synthetic version of 5-methoxy-DMT, which is produced in a lab. And there's different precursors you can make with it, which I'm not a producer of it, so I won't that's not my level of expertise, but it is produced in a lab.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have another question about integration. How do you work with integration? And could you give a comment on the practice of yoga and not just asanas? The meditation is in stabilization of samadhi, going beyond peak mystical experiences of spontaneous samadhi, non-stabilized state of samadhi.
Yeah, we'll go one by one. And the integration process with 5-methoxy-DMT it's unlike other psychedelics. When I work with it, the integration process starts with the first dose, or sorry, it starts from the moment we say yes together and we get to know each other's stories, identify the shadow work and all of the parts that are looking for acknowledgement and healing. And that's through story and connection. And then with each dose, my how I work with the molecule is I'm not aiming for a samadhi peak experience. My work is to uncover the shadow, and it's to find that spark that will empower the individual to now live a meaningful life, a powerful life. So we oftentimes work with just the low dose. And when there's little sparks of inspiration that come, we work with that. So it's always tailored to the individual. It's a collaboration together. So we find the little parts that are asking for support, acknowledgement, a hug. And I very much enjoy working with the intranasal or the low doses. And I wait for their enthusiastic yes once it's time, once we've worked together, to then at some point offer the full samadhi experience. So it's a relationship and a collaboration. And they're in the multiple phases of dosing. In the moderate dose, where some facilitators call it the hug, the fear and the ego really shows up, and that is a delicious piece to work with. So there's integration then we work through all the dosing levels, and the integration can then support what's that fear instinct, where in the body is that fear showing up, where does it also manifest in regular life, and we get to work with that. So integration is a individualized piece that I'm looking for the cues from the individual to start supporting their work. And it may be with breath work, it may be with somatics, it may be with all these different healing modalities that are available to us. And a comment on the practice of yoga, not just asanas, and meditation in stabilization of samadhi. Yes, so yoga it really means union. And so that is Ashtanga yoga. That what I helped with that visualization was the eightfold path of royal yoga or yoga. And I was using that illustration as each one of those is the path towards samadhi consciousness. And I believe that 5-methoxy-DMT can help with deepening each one of those limbs. So there are many limbs of yoga. And so I mentioned them, yama, niyama, and then there is the meditation, concentration, the withdrawal of senses. So there's those 8 limbs. And then the question of spontaneous samadhi, non-stabilized state of samadhi. If I may not be fully understanding where that question, so if you'd like to deepen that, I can try to answer.
Meantime, how do you work to prepare for this ceremonies that you create?
Well, there is the most important aspect of working with, I believe, any psychedelics, but especially 5-methoxy-DMT, which is incredibly powerful, incredibly vulnerable, is creating a relationship with your participant. So we get to know each other, and I very much emphasize that this is a collaboration together, so that there's that trust, and they are in a very specific container of consent, safety, and we have reverence for the molecule. So when I prepare, it's very important to clear my energy to then be able to focus and be a clear mirror for my participant. So I like to add in as much ritual as I can to ceremony. I do that in my everyday life. I believe in saying thank you to all of our elements each morning, and to witness and honor each element during the day. And then I invite in the 4 elements into my ceremony, as well as then inviting the 5th, which is the void, which is where 5-methoxy DMT, that's where she resides. And it's a tailored experience, and I'm still continuing to learn more tools like breath work, more tools like Reiki, and diving deeper into IFS work. So I like to tailor it based on the individual. Some people like it to be purely science-based and like a more in a therapeutic model, and some like it to be more ceremonial and more like how the shamans would, a more shamanistic approach. So I like to work with all the different ways that I can serve the molecule.
Thank you. And then this one, any risk with the period with emotional or sleep destabilization after an experience?
Most people find that they sleep very well after a 5 experience. There are a small proportion of people that find that their sleep is a little disrupted. So I can't yet find a correlation between experiences and who finds it disruptive, but most do find that their dreams are much more vivid after a 5-methoxy experience, and they sleep better because they are more aware of their bodies, and their bodies have let go of many of these tensions which can disrupt our sleep and keep us up at night. So that's an interesting part of 5-methoxy DMT. And I'm finding that question again. So that's how I found there's a risk with sleep. And I'll speak to, I think that there is for safety purposes, if a person does have sleep apnea, then I do believe that, and like heavy sleep apnea, there is a risk there with 5-methoxy DMT. The facilitator may not know their sleep patterns and how to then act with safety on if someone starts to have arrest of their breath. And let me also go back to interactions with 5-methoxy DMT. I spoke about the absolute contraindication of safety, but there are some molecules that would block its effects. So any pharmaceutical that would block serotonin 2A, such as trazodone and mirtazapine, those would then block the experience. So those are the 2 major interactions pharmaceutically or molecularly with the molecule.
All right. So then another question. Would you say that the mystical experience scale captures the aspects, characteristics of the samadhi state? If not, what is missing from the scale?
I can only speak to my own truth, and I have not meditated and done the royal limbs for thousands of hours, so I have not experienced that state without the aid of psychedelics. But when I had my very first non-dual experience and then subsequent multiple other experiences, when I read what many of the yogis and the yoga sutras and what they describe as samadhi consciousness or non-dual awareness, I believe that is where the 5-methoxy DMT takes you to. You have a glimpse of samadhi consciousness. And what are the characteristics or aspects of samadhi states? There's when they say nibbana is complete annihilation, that is very true to me. The Eleusinian mysteries, they used to have a practice called to die before you die, and where they would drink a sacrament called kukion and die before you die. So when I had my very first and multiple additional experiences with 5-methoxy DMT, it feels like complete annihilation. It feels like the most absolute surrender of every cell, every bit of consciousness, letting go and exploding into every crevice of what the universe can be, and feel everything all at once, but also nothingness at once. So I did, when I first came back, said that was everything and nothing all at once, and that's been repeated through many other experiencers. So it is a state of everything and nothing, which is the non-dual state, which is annihilation, which is nibbana. So I do believe that that is the state it takes you to.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so how often would you say is a safe, balanced intake? How much time between the experiences?
When I serve, and when I do serve the samadhi experience conscious dose, many people say, I think I'm good. Many people they say, I don't know if I'll ever need this again. It was an amazing teacher. Even myself, I received it, and I got the message. And Terence McKenna says, when you get the message, hang up the phone. And that's the time to do life's integration work. So I find that many journeyers may possibly only need one experience, but sometimes there's other indications for why they're using it, which is maybe substance use. They're trying to clear out their alcohol or their marijuana, and it can, after a few months, creep back on them, which is also an opportunity to identify, well, what is this craving? What is this craving helping you cope from? Why is it a coping mechanism, and go deep into there. But they may sometimes need additional support to then go into that experience again, to help clear out and identify who they want to be. So physiologically, there is no tolerance to the molecule. It's made in our bodies naturally, so there's no tolerance at all. And the most important aspect to this molecule is the integration, is what are you seeking from this experience, and what has it given you some insight into, where, oh, I have some rope to work with now. And that's the gift that it offers, is after having that samadhi experience, coming back into the body, there's a new awareness of all of our patterns and the defense mechanisms that are put in place through our ego, which is there to keep us safe. So it's with these insights that we start to move into our path of who I truly am, my authentic self. So that's why it's important to do the integration work. And I've just discovered, for me, this right here, this reality here is the ultimate trip. The gift that we have of our senses, of our story, of our experiences. So I do believe that the gift is to identify that, yes, this is the ultimate trip here.
I think that is a good reminder that the ultimate trip is happening here right now.
It is.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. So, what does the screening process for participating in Toad.School looks like? Who should not participate?
Well, Toad.School is meant to be a harm reduction workshop gathering. as in Vancouver, we have, you could literally walk into a dispensary of psilocybin and you can find vials of 5-methoxy-DMT. So it's incredibly important in Canada and many areas of Canada to have some knowledge and background of safety in all aspects, pharmaceutical, medical contraindications, dosing. So that's why I thought this is really important to share this. So participating in this in Toad.School is having a background of safety. And then the community is the backbone of Toad.School. It's working with other enthusiastic individuals who have backgrounds already of healing modalities. So many people are already supporting others with healing modalities of therapy, somatics, breath work, death doulas. There's so many amazing individuals that come through Toad.School, and they're looking to dovetail their gifts. So we all collaborate together, we form a community, and we all learn together and share our own experiences. So I screen for who is a good fit. I have found almost everyone who's wanted to attend are there to learn with an open heart. So if you're willing to dedicate multiple hours to learning about the molecule, I do feel like you're in a place that you are wanting to just learn about the molecule. So it's informational. So that's why I feel as if it's for educational and safety purposes.
Thank you. We have another question here that is interesting also. Challenging trips, as known from other psychedelics, how common are those with this medicine?
So 5-methoxy-DMT, if dosed in a tailored manner, and also in studies where they have done the dose finding, they state in the studies well tolerated with not many side effects. So it's even in studies they find it is safe. There are always, with anytime you're accessing deeper realms of consciousness, even in deep states of meditation, there are some risks that are involved with that. So with even in Vipassana, I've heard of some people who had challenging experiences. So there is an absolute risk with 5-methoxy-DMT because it is incredibly powerful, and that it can be challenging to integrate the experience itself, and can show you an awareness or an experience you may not be ready for. So I believe that 5-methoxy-DMT, if you're looking to receive the high dose, the individual should be having their own grounding practices, have had other psychedelic experiences to then know how to navigate the altered states of consciousness, so that the best we can do is provide preparation and knowing that they're ready for the experience. And there's still some people who may have challenging experience as well, but I do find there is a correlation between dose and challenging experiences, and those who may have went into the deep end too quickly, as spirit and the body and the nervous system may not have been ready to go in such a deep dive.
Right. Okay. And then to just continue a little bit on integration, what is your view on integration? You have mentioned a lot of it already, but if you would just expand a bit on how do you take a profound psychedelic experience into your daily life? If you would give some. practical or
Yeah,
philosophical tips on that one?
integration is it. I know it's such a hot keyword these days, and I believe that integration it's a lifelong practice. And my hopes for the future may be that we have integration specialists that are there to support the participant, the journeyer, for weeks to months afterwards. And then we have, because really integration in other communities and villages who would work with psychedelics, integration was with the community. The entire community knew what the medicine had to offer, and they all were key components of awareness and understanding of the self. So my wish, and I work with others who are, I am, I do, integration is something I'm continually working and learning with. And also it's my area where I love sitting with the medicine and the intensity and the beauty of it. And then I love the follow-up. But then if there's continuous need for support, that's where I lean into my community and I do referrals. So if they need some acupuncture, they need massage, if they need somatic work, if they need IFS therapy, I then have my community to lean on, because it should be a village to support integration work. So what I enjoy doing is finding the little insights through what they shared in their experience, the little insights of language, how they refer to themselves, their story. And I am their mirror to highlight to them. And my work is to empower them to do their own work. So integration process is about being a mirror and identifying the little bits of insight that help them become empowered into their regular life process of gratitude and appreciation of life and the beautiful stories that come about. So the integration process is, once again, it's very individualized, but it is about listening and being that compassionate space that some people may not have even identified. If they, like, for an example, they may project on to you that you are now their mother or their father or their partner, and project on to you as a facilitator, and your then beautiful ability then is to respond differently than their trauma, and that can then help with, there's a new possibility that's rewired. So yes, there's so much to describe about integration, but it is about listening and being able to be a mirror and being able to identify areas where you can try to change that relationship of their trauma and how they hold on to that trauma.
Integration is so important. Would you agree that there are some spiritual, physiological, philosophical risks in jumping straight into the eighth limb with the 5-MeO DMT, especially for people with a secular background?
Well, there was a study with many DMT molecules. So psilocin is a DMT molecule, ayahuasca is DMT, and they studied atheists and gave them DMT. And they found that 70% of atheists describe themselves as no longer atheist. So there is a profound shift in the deepest roots of our consciousness with many DMT molecules. So the informed consent would need to be what are you willing to let go of? Are you willing to have this shatter your foundations of what you know as yourself, your ego? So there is a it is it's important to know who you're serving, and then also just moving straight into a high dose samadhi consciousness experience can be very difficult. So I that's why I'll 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 pair this with another question is I don't often move into the high dose experience. I work with low dose most of the time. And when we both have collaborated and identified together, yes, we're ready to go into this samadhi consciousness, the full surrender experience. That's when it's after a relationship and knowing you're ready to work through all the different levels and layers of the medicine.
Beautiful. So it seems you recommend the molecule as one-time transformative experience rather than as a tool in a continual multi-step process. Is that understood correctly? Is a question.
Okay, I think I tried to pair into that one. So I think that this molecule is what we know from the, I'll even call it the stigma of the molecule, is that you take it and you blast off into non-dual state. And I have, with working with it, I find it to be incredibly healing at the low doses. So my process is low dose, low dose, low dose, low dose, sometimes insufflated, sometimes smoked. And because my work is to support my journeyer and to integrate and to identify those areas where the shadow shows up and parts work. So I work with it very differently, and I find it to be, my approach is gentle and safe and enthusiastic consent, an enthusiastic yes. And I think that that is it's an area of psychedelics that we're starting to identify as another powerful opportunity. Like, we already know about microdosing and how that can be low dose, almost sub-perceptual, is incredibly healing. But there's a middle dose where you get to navigate the psychedelic experience and have the support of the psychedelic. Like, say, psilocybin low dose, 2 grams compared to 5-6 grams. I love the 2 gram dose because I'm navigating the experience and I have, my consciousness is fully online and we're weaving the story together. That is a more gentle approach, whereas there's a strong approach, which is the authorities of the past were Terence McKenna, Timothy Leary, Ram Dass. They took on the masculine role, which is you're ready to fly out of the nest. You can jump and fly. Whereas I find that now we're coming back to a balanced approach where we can work with low dose as well as high dose. But when you're ready, you don't jump out of the nest before you've flapped your wings a few times. So I do think that we're evolving our psychedelic practice to tailor this to each person and their needs and their very unique process in life.
I think that was the most beautiful way of wrapping up this conversation. Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this last week when the three of us had a chat together. So I'm really happy you mentioned this as well. Like, it doesn't have to be big to be profound.
Yes,
We can also invite more gentleness and softness to our life, and maybe that is what we need to invite to society as well.
agreed.
And all right, thank you all at home for joining this evening and for all interesting questions. And thank you so much, Trina, for your time and for all that you've shared tonight and for sharing your story. And if you want to know more about Todd.School, they can contact you directly through your website, and explore more, right?
Yes, absolutely. Look forward to hearing from all of you.
We wish you a great rest of the evening, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.